In the introduction to visible learning, Hattie goes to great lengths to explain his book is about what works best, because he claims that virtually everything works, and he wants to distinguish that between what works, a what works recipe, or what doesn't work. And then he makes that classic statement, one only needs a pulse and we can improve achievement. Yet in 2018, with his commercial partner Corwin, he publishes a what works recipe. Now, it's important to understand the three themes that Hattie switches depending on which audience that he's talking to. So, as I said, visible learning is what works best, because his claim is that almost everything works. So, using that hinge point of 0.4, anything above 0.4 works best, and anything below 0.4 doesn't work best, I guess. Although many people have shown that that's not quite true. Like Dylan Williams shows that around 40% of feedback studies give negative effect sizes, so that contradicts Hattie's claim there. He does go into the does work and does not work, even in this paper, using words like distractions. In other lectures there was disasters and also rounds and a whole bunch of other things. Then he can switch to it's the story, not the numbers. Even though in visible learning he said it's not a book about classroom life and does not speak to the nuances and details of what happens within classrooms. In 2005, in his ACER lecture in Australia, he started publishing these disaster slides, which probably got him attention because of the class size debate showing or claiming class size is a disaster. But with relevance to this section, it's problem-based learning included in those disasters. He continued many years later in New Zealand in his Nuttall lecture. Love the car crash icon. Problem-based learning is defined as a disaster. Around the same time, the US Education Department set up its statistical section called the What Works Clearinghouse, and it included 20 or more distinguished professors. They have a stringent quality control. Some say too stringent. Many peer reviews show Hattie does not. In fact, hardly any meta-analysis that Hattie uses would pass their quality control protocols. They don't have any commercial benefits. They don't sell books or have any other commercial third-party payments. If you check the New Zealand Education Union report on Hattie's commercial interests, it's an interesting read. But the big question is why are their summaries and their research findings so different to Hattie's? For example, their overall summary shows that there's not a lot of good things for most educational influencers, and one of the things they say there is strong evidence for is asking deep explanatory questions, the sorts of things you do in an inquiry-based and problem-based learning approach. So that directly contradicts Hattie. Hattie then in this distractions paper says change is sweet. He says the argument is not that any of these solutions are irrelevant, wrong or mischievous, but that an overemphasis is the problem. So that contradicts his what works best using that hinge point of 0.4. So now it's an overemphasis. How do you measure the overemphasis? How does the school know if it's emphasizing one over the other? Hattie doesn't explain that. Then in this particular section, one of the themes is this notion of deep learning, which he does develop in visible learning, although he uses a slightly different model. It looks like he's simplified his model here to be just two aspects, surface knowledge and deep learning, and some sort of balance between the both of them. He then talks about the strategies to improve deep learning, like problem-based learning and inquiry-based strategies, have low effect sizes because they're below 0.4. But then he says he then says it's not that they are not worthwhile programs, which contradicts his hinge point of 0.4. And now he says that the problem is that they are often implemented in ways that does not develop surface understanding first. Well, none of the studies that he references show that. And if you think about it, it'd be very hard to create a study that could measure these sorts of things. So this is a really speculative statement. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. And just in summary, a very insightful paper in 2017 shows a major contradiction. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you.